Okay, well, I must be honest, this is one of the coolest settings I've done. I've presented all over the world, and I think this theater and the way it's set up and the size of the slides, I mean, isn't this cool? And this is like really, really amazing. So well done to the BBD folks. I think it's an amazing location. When they gave me the slot, I usually get the slot. I either get like the opening, but then they meet me again and they invite me back and they give me the closing. I always get the graveyard shift. I have no idea why. So I'm the guy that like after lunch, after drinks, after you guys have mingled, I'm the last presentation that you're going to listen to. Look, what I'm going to try and go through is kind of where the world is now and what I believe it looks like in the next 36 to kind of 5 years, 36 months to 5 years. I'm going to try and map that out. And it's very dangerous to do it, especially when you're sitting in front of a group of folks like you, right? I love software developers. I love hardware engineers. It is the people that I surround myself with on a day-to-day basis. I have 8 companies right now that I'm an angel investor in. I think it's 8. I should say 7. It's not really 8. The next one is we messing around still. And I usually have guys that are 2, 3 human beings that come to me. They have an idea. They pre-seed. They're in that alpha stage, and they just want to find out, can I keep the lights on, and can they engineer? And we kind of mesh it around, and we play around with it. And we get it to a point where it's a product. And as soon as it's a product, we either I jump out because from an IP sale perspective, I exit. I don't like companies when there's HR involved or someone else's. I just like it when it's like 3 to 5 developers, because what I've noticed in my career, as in total, I mean, what I've been able to achieve in my career with 3 to 5 software developers or software engineers, it's just not what you can achieve with 20 to 30. I mean, I think you guys know that small teams are much more impactful. You can build stuff very rapidly. So I'll tell you who I am in a second, but I was thinking about how do I open this up, and I thought, let me open this up based upon where I was just before this. So the reason I'm in a tie is because I'm 49 years old now, so I'm old. No, don't clap for that. That's pathetic. I'm 49 years old now, so it kind of gives away my age, but I tend to go into meetings now with very, very senior people. So today I was with a very, very senior government official and a very, very senior executive in a blue chip company, and they're kind of getting together with them. And I had to brief them on kind of where the world's going, because a lot of executives now don't understand what's going on. But I think you folks too. You guys think you know what's going on, but like there's a lot of noise at the moment. I mean, especially when it comes to LLMs and AI, and like every week this thing's eclipsing, and then something completely changes again. I'm going to allude to something in my opening slides now in a second. But at the end of this presentation, he put his hand on my shoulder, this guy, and he said, this government guy, very senior government guy, and he said, but like, what's the future of technology? Like, where's all this stuff going? And I thought, let me open up with that. The only thing that we can really reference back clearly is it's a book called Let There Be Light. It's called The Empires of Light. And it's written by a lady from MIT, and she wrote about the discovery of electricity. When we kind of discovered electricity, do you know, like for the first 40 years post its discovery, we never knew what to do with it. There was like no monetization of electricity. There was no model, no business model. The first people that made money out of electricity wasn't Tesla and all these other people. You know who made money out of electricity? It was with people that went to the state fair. They paid a penny to go to the tent behind the tent. There was a guy, looked with the ponytail, the nose ring, the tattoos. They'd pay him a penny to go in there to go look at Tesla's arc. So he'd render it, he'd hack it, and there was Tesla's arc, like vroom, vroom. And like the person would stand in the tent, their hair was all raised, they'd come out there and be like, what the fuck? This is like amazing, right? Look at this, their hair standing up. That was the first time electricity was ever monetized. The first time electricity was monetized was the domain of the few. It was mystical. It was the kind of the nose ring, weird guys, the tent behind the tent. And those were the first people that made money out of electricity. They hacked it. Then the second jump that electricity had, when it started making money, was when it became a fashion symbol. Rich people got involved in it, right? And what rich people do, they hired hackers, and they got these people, and they said, now make electricity for me in my house in downtown Manhattan. And then we saw the second jump from a monetization perspective, and that jump was when people were making electricity for wealthy people in downtown Manhattan. Rich people slept with the lights on because ambiency was a reflection of affluency, right? When you slept with the lights on, you were like rich. It's like when we walk into meetings with our iPhones 15s or 14s, we put it on the table. We don't know what to do with this thing, right? But it looks cool, right? We put it down, and with the functionality we don't truly comprehend, but it becomes this fashion symbol. And that's what happened with electricity. So first, domain of the few. Second jump, it became fashionable, domain of the rich, etc. And then people's houses started burning down. People started complaining because there was noise and pollution, etc., etc. And what was the third jump? is when it disappeared. When electricity disappeared, when it dissipated, when it got put into a cloud, an electrical grid or electrical cloud, we figured out three things. We figured out how to convey it over vast distances. We created this thing, a standard to tether to it. Let's just call it AC/DC, TCP/IP. Right? We could tether onto it, so you could just plug into it and something would work. And then the third thing was a per minute utilization. So a monetary model emerged from it, and suddenly electricity was everywhere, but nowhere. It was only a few electrical engineers that knew how to do X, Y, and Z, but literally what we cared about was the utilization of it as a utility. So it was the consequence of its availability. It wasn't what it is. And then it had its impact on the Industrial Revolution. So first it becomes something that you can touch. First it becomes something that's this experiential, beautiful thing, and then suddenly it dissipates. And in its dissipation, it has its true societal and economic impact. We saw this with maps. When we got lost with, the first, I don't know, some of you are very young in this audience, right? But when I grew up, I remember my dad's first car and cars that people used to buy, and it's not too long ago. Some of you will not, but you buy a car and you open up the cubbyhole, and in there was a map book. Right? There was no GPS navigation in cars. There was a map book. You touched geo. So to get to point A to B, the functionality, the technology was rendered to you in an atom-based way. It was just like electricity was this voo, voo. You touch this thing. So it's a physical experience. You take the map book out, you go, okay, this is where I am. By the way, it's still a great way. Doesn't need a single signal. It doesn't need a battery. It never reboots on you, anything. It's a great way. Just, by the way, you should try it out, map books. They're awesome. So physical, right? And then what happened to the map book, to the function of geo? It jumped. And it became something that we engaged with from a wealth perspective. I remember in the late 90s, I think it was late 90s, I used to walk around, it was late 90s, I used to walk around with those big, you remember that big fat Garmin device with the big fat aerial? Some of you are nodding, you're in my category, right? That was the first time we ever got a device outside of military that you could go and buy, and you'd walk around, and it had a monochrome screen, fat aerial, it would triangulate to satellites, and it had absolutely no purpose, but it was cool. We'd go to meetings with it, you'd see people walking around with it, and this fat aerial getting in it. It was like, chicks digged it. So we had it. It was cool. But it had no, it was just it was a display of affluency. And then something happened to geo, right? Then it became pretty, and prettier, and prettier, and prettier. And then you had Google Maps, TomTom, Garmin. I'm walking up on the stage. Yeah, I've got a Garmin watch on. So what's the future of geo? A better Google Maps? A more annotated one? Or more what? No. I'll tell you what the future is. I was working at Google, and I'll never forget this. I think it was in between 2006 and 2008. They invited all the directors inside of Google to fly to Mountain View to go look at this brand new technology. We didn't know what it was going to be. We went there, and Larry and Sergey were on the stage, and next to them was a blind guy. We were like, what's this about? We didn't know. And then on the stage came a self-driving Prius. The blind guy goes, tick, 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 tick. He gets into the Prius. He's got a headset on. He tells the Prius, take me to Taco Bell. And on the nice big screens, we watch as it drives off. We watch him get to Taco Bell. They put a taco in his hand, and often he comes back on stage and he has a taco in his hand. That's when we saw that geo had disappeared, and now it was going to have its true impact. See, it wasn't this thing that you touch. It wasn't this thing that's pretty that you engage with, prettier. It's when it dissipates. It's when it's embedded in the object and it executes consequentially. Then it has its purpose. Then it has its broad set applicability. And then suddenly everyone has access to it. That's what we keep seeing happening with technology, bringing it to the technology world. Like when I worked at Telkom in the early 90s, right? Yes, early 90s, middle 90s. Some of you were born then. I worked at Telkom, right? This is when we used to connect to the internet. We used to go home with a keyboard, a mouse, right? A screen, and a tower with floppies. And we used to put it into the machine. Right? We used to connect to the internet. How? We used to know a good scream from a bad scream. Like, no, it's not connected right. Unplug it. Redo it. All right. Or your mom, when you're on the internet and your mom answers the phone, you're like, ah. Right? That was our experience. Our experience was experiential. I mean, it was just you needed a computer science degree just to connect stuff. To connect the printer, as a printer driver, you install the printer driver, cables at the back, etc. Software that you eat, it eats, you can hear it, it's chewing it, the disk coming. And then you fast forward to today. The complete convergence, right? You walk into an iStore, you walk into a Samsung store, and you walk out, and you've got a glowing rectangle. Right? You give it to an 80-year-old person, you give it to a 2.5-year-old child, they know what to do. Right? They have a deep, rich, multimedia, immersive, informational experience because of the dissipation of the technology. So whatever you are building, and I want to prompt you with this, whatever you're building, if it's more and more experiential, you need to stop yourself from a project perspective, take a step back and realize that that's not actually the future of that particular service. It's when the service is embedded and it intelligently executes relative to the sensory elements, then it has its true purpose. Right? When we thought payment was going to be QR codes inside of Ubers. The banks will tell you that. Right? Contactless payments. We all get excited about it. Woo! Right? Oh, it's QR code based, or it's like Zappa, or it's like the SnapScan, and they get all happy about it. Well, what was the magic about Uber? The fact that you got into an object, you engaged with a human, and then you got out of the object, and payment happened because of location and proximity. It just executed relevantly, consequentially. But the purpose wasn't the payment. The purpose was for you to get from point A to B. That's how software needs to work. That's how hardware needs to work. The broad populace outside there don't want to get your tools and services that are pretty for you. Mass adoption of technology services I've discovered in my career, successfully so. Yes, I've failed a lot, but the few successes that I've had, I've noticed. It's when we build things that don't require user engagement. It executes consequentially as a service, whether that's a hardware device, whether that's a piece of software. And I think that's the future. The future is when you can embed things in. You know, when I look for an Uber, right, I don't launch the Uber website. I don't open up the Uber app. You know what I access? Echo, with the Uber application integrated with Alexa. Amazon, I speak it into existence. Like while I'm putting my shoes on, I go, Alexa, Uber, Empress Palace, I give the address, Alexa spins, goes, okay, it's a piece of 3 minutes away, Toyota Corolla. She tells me then when I'm downstairs again that he's outside, and I run outside, I talk to Tsubiso, we have a great chat, he brings me to Empress Palace, I jump out, and I'm here. I engaged with so many services in a consequential, invisible way. That's the new architecture. That's the new way things need to work. We don't need more technology. We need more technology to disappear and to execute intelligently. And luckily for you folks that are young right now, you are coming into a world where the networks and the services are incredibly powerful. Think about it for a second. A phone that's in your hand. Don't call it a phone. It's not a phone. It's a peripheral sensory real-time rendering device. That's what it is. I mean, if you articulate it that way, then you'll understand that this thing has proximity, it can hear, it can feel, it can see. Yeah, it's got movement sensors, all of those sensors, that sensory attributes lay dormant on the edges of the network. And then inside the network, we say cloud computing, cloud computing, cloud computing. Be careful with cloud computing. I don't think it's about cloud computing in the sky. I think it's about clouds in our hands. There's a study that's been done by Wired magazine, Kevin Kelly and his guys. It's kind of dated now, it's a few months old. But they looked at the internet in the last 24 months to establish what was the broad-based activity on the internet. What were people doing on it? You know that almost 80% of internet traffic in the world is giving, not taking. Can I say that again? Almost 80% of all internet traffic in the world at the moment is giving, not taking. People are not going into the cloud to get stuff. People are utilizing the frameworks of the cloud to generate content on the edges because that's what they want to do. That's the behavior. People don't just want your service anymore. They want to extend your service. They want to build themselves and express themselves within the context of your service. And we'll talk more and more about that in a little bit. Okay, so just by the way, that was the discussion I had just before my presentation. Some of you are going, this looks in slide one. Like, what the? Like, chill. Okay, and don't worry, I've got lots of slides. The guys that are paying me are like, where's the slides, guy? We paid you for slides. I put up this mid-journey image. I mean, this is fascinating. You can't really see the res that I can see on this screen on that one, but it's extraordinary mid-journey, right? I mean, what it's capable of doing. I must be honest, in my career, and I've been in IT now for 30-odd years, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything move so fast. I've never seen anything like this. And I've seen some big jumps in my career in IT. I worked at Telkom in the middle 90s, and we were lucky because we were the guys that worked on some of the ARPA and DARPA nodes. This is when the internet had no UI. And we ran around telling everyone the internet was going to be big. And we were like, yeah, whatever, man. It's not going to be big. And then the browser came along, and we kept on saying it. And then, applications birthed from that, etc. And then Telkom did that experiment. I don't know if some of you know that, but Telkom took a bird. I was part of the team back then when it happened in the 90s. If anyone's worked at Telkom back then, you'll remember Andy Mills and Gideon LaRue. Anyway, to prove us wrong in IT, they took a pigeon, with a note, wrapped it around the pigeon's leg. We wrote the note in an email. We click send. They released the pigeon. The recipient was in Durban. The pigeon got there before the message got there. And they just wanted to prove how bad we were. Like, this internet thing's a joke. It's not going to go anywhere. And I say, we're always like, be careful with this stuff. Don't underestimate it. And what it's going to become, we never really know. So I was part of that, and I saw that. And I was very, very lucky to see the internet become user interface-based with the browser, and while that birthed. And then when I went to the United States, I lived there for 7 years, and I saw open source software birth. I met Nat Friedman, Miguel de Icaza. I was part of the Novell team that went off and did the deal where Novell got into open source software, because I just knew open source software was going to be big. I don't know why, I couldn't explain it properly, but we just knew it was going to be huge. Then I came back to South Africa, and then Google enticed me. So I was the first employee for Google in Africa. I ran Google Africa for 3.5 years. That was fascinating. And that's when I kind of saw what was happening on the outside of a firewall. So in my career, I've had these nice big jumps, and it's very opportune, and I've managed by accident to be in the room with the right people at the right time, and it's just fortuitous. And AI feels big. AI is the goosebumps moment to me, very similar to the moment with Bitcoin, when I touched Bitcoin kind of like 7 years ago, like 6.5, 7 years ago. I got into Bitcoin, and I'll never forget when I got into Bitcoin, I was very deep into payment technologies. I had built this device, which I'll show you just now, Payment Pebble, that did card payments. And then my team had built it up from the ground up, hardware, security, et cetera, et cetera. And then someone came and showed me Bitcoin. And I was like, no, man, it's not going to go anywhere. There's another e-currency, et cetera. And then I kind of like peeled the onion, and I was like, no, wait. And then I had that goosebumps moment. So I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't believe in all the other altcoins, and you can argue with me another day, but I just believe that's the one. And I love proof of work, and I love the way that blockchain works. And I think it's all going to converge onto that blockchain in the end. All this other stuff was really cool, computer science and software developer world playing around with it, all these tokens. But at the end of the day, I think Bitcoin's going to be huge. But what's happened again after that was this kind of middle of last year towards the end, November, this was just big for me. I felt like, and I think these two worlds are coming together. They're not like what crypto does, right? It's pure decentralization. It's sovereign individual. AI is kind of pushing in the opposite direction. It's like it wants all your data. It wants to grab everything. It doesn't want you to be sovereign, right? It wants all your attributes, all of that, because if you give it more and more and more, and it's controlled in the central way, then it gives you this incredible service. So we've got these like two architectures that's completely dichotomous, like in front of us right now. One's pulling towards sovereign, privacy, control, self, and this one is all about like releasing all your data. Give me as much as you can. Let's build large LLMs on terabits of data, train it, and give this incredible experience. So I do think these two things come together from a repudiation perspective. We're clearly seeing that in the LLM world. The big challenge right now is identity. Is this thing real? Is this thing that? I think this is where the blockchain world will kind of catch up, and the two will meet each other. I don't know if you work on a lot of this stuff, but proofs inside of the blockchain world, I think this is where the two can meet each other, where we can create signatures around the world. So AI, huge. So let's jump in. I just did this quickly just to show, in my opinion, like Midjourney's journey, just since October last year. If you typed in Otter using Wi-Fi on an airplane, take a look at the renders. I mean, one is October, the bottom, and then November, and then March, and then like just recently, take a look at that. You can't really see it clearly on the screen, but on my screen over here, the definition, the resolution on that is extraordinary. I mean, these things learn so quickly. And people just say, well, this is just a predictive text thing that's on steroids and like da. Be careful with that, right? Humanity is stitched together with language. The way we convey, that we build buildings and highways and fly planes, and society is stitched together by language. Don't underestimate language. If you want to read a book that's incredible, it's The History of Language. The guy also writes another book of the history of voice, but he talks about the history of language and how powerful language is. And now we've trained this model. I love what Yuval Noah says. He says, what changed us as a species, and I think he said it in Sapiens or Homo Deus, I can't remember which one, he said is when we externalized our stomachs. So when we discovered fire, discovering of fire was interesting, but the true notion of the discovery of fire was that we could partially digest things on the outside and then fully ingest them, as a second phase. And I think this is not dissimilar to where we are now. We've externalized our minds. We've externalized our minds since 2006, 2007. Hyper externalized it, right? Social media, we tell how we feel, we take selfies, we take pictures of our food, we take pictures of our children, ourselves, where we are on holiday, etc. We just keep externalizing our minds and our emotions, and now suddenly we have these things that have been trained on all of this data that now kind of understand us, and that's an externalization of who we are. And I think not dissimilar to when we kind of extended our stomachs or extended our digestive system through fire. I think in principle, the same thing's occurring now because we've externalized our minds. And it's very, very interesting because it's creating challenges around who we are and what are we going to use these things for? And will they take away our jobs and all of that other stuff? I think all those debates are very, very interesting. But what I want to share with you today is something that I think is a big architectural change that's changed. So what you're going to see is 2 videos I'm going to show you. This is Elon Musk, and he did it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. He showed FSD, the latest FSD, full self-driving. I took 2 clips out of that. He did it real, and I watched it in real time. And what was very, very interesting is the architecture of how how FSD is executing right now. And from a software architecture perspective, I want you to keep those hats on. And notice how it's not LiDARs and big sensory equipment like a Waymo car. It is just a car with an eye attached to an LLM that has been trained on enormous amounts of video content that Tesla drivers have been federating into the big data lake that they created for video. So if you had a Tesla, you didn't know when you signed the EULA, the end user license agreement, that you agreed to take all the video data from your car and federate it into the big fat data lake that they had in the background. And that data lake was being utilized to train the LLM. And all they did with the LLM was just say, look at what people are doing with the objects in there. And you'll notice that the way it executes now is not because it has the intelligence in the car, terabytes of code, etc. No. What it is it understands what it's looking at like a human does. And based on the learnings that they fed into it, it then executes accordingly. It knows when it needs to turn left. It knows what to do at a traffic light. It knows a cyclist from a tree because it's been trained, right? On millions and millions of hours of Tesla drivers watching what they do with their vehicles. This is a new architecture. This is a new way to do something in this particular world. So let's take a look at it. Now, I do think I put this up. Now, this came out, I presented this December last year at a business news conference. Well, I wanted to show like how multimodal was like here. And like, multimodal large language was here, and like you could do stuff. So if you take a look at the pictures, you ask the AI, explain why this photo is funny. And the AI would say, well, the cat's wearing a mask that gives the cat a smile. Why did the little boy cry? The answer is because his scooter's broke. What is the hairstyle of the blonde called? It's a ponytail. So that's extraordinary, right? So now we have these like capabilities, not just with pictures, but also in video, where AIs can understand picture, they can understand video content, and based upon like repetitive learning and reinforced learning, etc. And this has led to this. Now, this is I did this on my phone. I apologize. I don't know what the resolution will be like here, but I did it, and I thought I just want to use it quickly because there was nothing online for it. Watch this. Listen to what he says here.
So it's gotten itself into the left turn lane. Again, we've never programmed in the notion of a turn lane or anything like that.
Or even a lane.
We doesn't even know what we've never. There's no line that says there's no line of code about traffic lanes at all.
There's no line of code of traffic lights at all. Right? It understands what it is. I notice they keep talking.
It might know all these concepts and how we think about it, the hints and things like those, but you just not explicitly ask for it.
Yeah. Well, just like humans. Yeah. Just,
Come on, Alon, speak again. I thought this would be quicker. It's the first time I'm presenting this, so. Okay, now watch when it gets there.
Random pin.
Arrive at a random pin. Now watch what the car does. Because it's arrived there, it knows to do the following.
Yeah, so it kind of, so this is pretty cool. So the car
just
pulled over to the side of the road.
And there's no line of code that told it to do that.
And
knew to do that.
And parked.
And parked. And he's even surprised.
It knows at the end of its destination, based on the video that's received, that at the end of the destination, you pull over to the side and park.
Yeah,
and
it also gets the exact pin location in addition to the navigation route. So,
that's extraordinary.
Close is a good spot here. Puts over here, but in big parking lots where there might not be any map, it should just go as close to the pin as possible.
Right. Exactly.
Even without any route or anything like that.
Come on, Allah.
Yeah, and in fact, in sort of robotaxi world, it would actually just, probably perhaps know what you look like and say, and just.
Okay, I'm not going to wait for him, but what he says there is that your car will come to where you are and it'll know what you look like and it will come to you. So it'll identify your face amongst the crowd and then go, okay, cool, I'm parked there to tell you what, I'm just around the corner. I know I've just noticed that you're there. And but the key thing, that's like the cool feature set. Forget that for a second. Think about it from a software architecture perspective, right? There's this huge data lake. This LLM's been trained at it. Real-time information is feeding into the system in real time. And based upon its understanding of its surroundings, based upon the video content streaming in real time, the car is reacting relative to that. That is extraordinary. That is a new architecture that we didn't think would come now. I thought maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, but they've done it. And they've now got this dojo thing that they're talking about and all that other stuff. But this is quite amazing. Now, let's just listen to this clip, what he says here.
Now, one of the interesting things about sort of pure AI driving is that it actually doesn't need a map at all. So we could delete the navigation system, simply give it a GPS point and say, get to this GPS point somehow.
No more maps.
I'm tell you how. You could say, like, you see that building in the distance, go there. And it would do that even with no, it would just, it might make some, get to it.
Okay, you get the gist of it, right? And now listen, this is right after that, take a look at this. This is a guy that follows him a lot, and he talks about it, but at the bottom, this Victor Valencia guy replies, funny how we opted in to become beta testers to the current old system, yet every single Tesla out there somehow contributed to FSD. Okay, every single Tesla, all the cars since April had it in there, so it allowed. So they've been gathering all this data all the time from all the Teslas, all the video content, and training the LLM on this. So the LLM now knows how the car needs to behave relative to its learning of behavior of other drivers, stopping, starting, turning, etc. That is extraordinary. That's a new architecture that makes us think very, very differently around how we need to build things. Now, from this, I like this a lot because I do a lecture at some of the business schools to some of the MBAs, not folks like yourselves, and they always stare at me blankly. So let me allude to that a little bit more because I think this audience would appreciate it more. But I kind of build a map, which I call a map for the new economy, which I think is how businesses need to look moving forward. Are not businesses that are like platforms. You need to become a platform business, like boring. Big data, for me, boring. Like clouds, boring, right? I think what was more interesting is those things combined with real-time information. So the beauty of AI, in my opinion, is its ability to unlock real-time information. And when it unlocks real-time information, it kind of invigorates this latent potential in a business that executives, engineers didn't see in the first place. So what I'm going to show you is Uber now. So here's the model. Don't go into too much detail. This is a business model map for the next economy. I want to show you how Uber is kind of a business that maps into this, where Uber is not a cab company with an app. If you think Uber is a cab company with an app, then you're not understanding architecturally how it's put together, right? When you go to Uber, so I kind of stitch Uber into that, where its phrase is transportation as reliable as running water. And when you take a look at all the aspects of it, I don't think they're a platform business. I believe they are an algorithmic marketplace. And I think from a software architecture perspective and an overall architecture perspective, when you start thinking about your application services in this way, it becomes different from just like data lakes and big data, etc. It's where you start having this like breathing, learning organism. So Uber fits this beautifully. It's not the best render of it, but it's an amazing render of it. Why? When you are an Uber driver and you go to the Uber head office in Parktown, you know what you do? You knock on their door, you say, hey, I'm Joe, I'm Stafford. Here's my Toyota Corolla. Here's my papers. I come from Zambia. I've only lived in South Africa for 1 month. They don't ask you any other questions. They do a background check. They walk you in. They sit you down to the table, and then you walk out, and they give you a number. That's it. That you put on your phone, and you put it on your car on the dashboard. You put that number in. So you launch the driver derivative of the app. It spins, 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 and it goes, hi, Stafford. Oh, welcome. And it tells you step by step, turn by turn, avoiding traffic, where to park your car to get the quickest amount of rides. That's extraordinary, right? After that, you don't work for anyone at Uber. You work for what? The Uber algorithm. You check into the algorithm orchestrates you, and you check out of the algorithm, and you go home. Or you just take off, right? But that's the Uber driver experience. For you, on the consumer side, every single one of you with the Uber app, go read the end user license agreement. When you install the Uber app, You just went, yes, 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 yes. Like we always do. I don't read that stuff, right? And that's why we shove all the details in there. Like we're going to take this, and we're going to cross-references, and we're going to look into this. If you run the Facebook Messenger app, someone actually did a very beautiful thing in Wired magazine to show you like your complete privacy violation. If you just install like the Facebook Messenger app on your phone, like what you gave up in the EULA, it's extraordinary. But anyway, Uber, you install the app, and then everywhere you go, you've agreed to tell Uber, or to give Uber your latitude, longitude, and your proximity to other people all the time. You gave that up. You gave that information up. You are not a consumer of Uber services only. You are a participant in the algorithmic marketplace that Uber has established. So they take your real-time information of where you are, and then they orchestrate it into their big data lakes with the real-time information of where the drivers is, and they create a transportation service that was previously unimagined. You go anywhere in the world, you get a car within 3 to 5 minutes. That's extraordinary. But how does that work? It's because they're algorithmic. They're not a platform business. They're not a business with an app. They're a business where the participants in the network federate attributes and characteristics into it to give that service something unimaginable. So when you go, as a consumer, when you go book an Uber and it shows surge pricing, pricing goes up, and you go, yeah, okay, I want the cab. You know what happens? That surge pricing, the reason that occurs is because it looks at the predicted amount of rides to occur relative to the density of cabs in their proximity, and then it pushes that surge pricing up. As soon as you go, yes, a couple of people go, and then you see the surge pricing comes down because those guys start their engines as they move closer, that surge pricing settles back down again. There's not one single person inside of Uber that you can go and sit down and say, explain to me in detail exactly how surge pricing works. Just like you cannot go to Google and meet any single engineer or even a group of engineers that can replicate what PageRank does today. I worked inside of Google back then, and I noticed it. That back then, in 2006, 2007, the engineers inside of Google were subject to the algorithm. They worked in the data centers relative to what the data center was telling them it needed. They worked on PageRank and all the software relative to what PageRank was telling them, not what they were coding PageRank to do. That had eclipsed. Which was quite extraordinary to see that. So what I'm positing here is that there's a new architecture emerging. Elon Musk has taken it to the next level because he's got all that GPUs that he's purchased. He's got that new, I don't know if it's a TPU or what he's going to call it, but that new processing chipset that he's got and he's developing with all this data set, and take a look at what he's capable of doing. And that data set is so powerful, not because it's a nice big data set trained on an LLM. I would argue that is so powerful because it is an architecture where real-time information is federating as a subsystem into the overall marketplace and delivering a service that was previously unimagined. You take any business in the world. I worked at Google, and let me tell you another. I keep saying I worked at Google. Don't chill with that. This guy keeps talking about Google. I also hate it when they call me the Google guy because I think I've done so much since then. We're like, no, you worked at Google. So I keep doing that myself, and I'm doing it. I apologize, but I'll tell you a little example of when I worked on a project in Google. This is 2008, 2009. We got together, and it was different people from around the world, and a lot of them had computer science backgrounds. So we kind of sat down and we came up with this business for a particular thing, and we flew to Mountain View, and we convinced Nikesh Arora at that time, head of EMEA, to hook us up with Larry and Sergey, and we all prepared to present to Larry and Sergey. And we had this plan where if we executed on this, our forecast was like $20 billion in the first 5 years, and it would be huge, et cetera, et cetera. I'll never forget, we pitched it. Larry and Sergey sat, Sergey left after 10 minutes, and we were like, okay. And then Larry sat, and he listened to us, and then he got up, and he said, guys, what does this do for the user? Now, Google had their 10 things. You don't have to wear a suit to be serious, et cetera, but one of them was focus on the user and all else will follow. That was the first thing. Focus on the user and all else will follow. This is for the first time in my life I saw a business do like a mission statement thing, and then actually the executives personifying it. This is what he did. He came up, he said, guys, this is amazing, but let me take you through my thinking around why this is not what we're going to do. And we were like, okay, why? And he said, number one, if you're going to bring anything to me, you need to do one of these 4 or 5 things. Let me see if I can remember them. He said, number one, speed. Whatever you do, I want to know how it improves speed for the consumer. Speed. Does it make it faster? Number one, tick. Number 2, simplicity. Does it make it fast? It doesn't increase simplicity. Has to do both. And then number 3, it has to improve relevancy. Does it make it faster? Does it make it simpler? Does it increment relevancy? Number 4, can you render what you're doing with verbosity? So even more than you had before. And number 5, can we execute from a compute perspective with agility? But the top 4 is what he was looking for whenever you brought something to him. He said, if you deliver me these 4 things, then I know that you focused on the user and I know everything else will follow. No matter how big the market share or opportunity was, he wasn't interested in it. He was interested in the service, provided it could go through those traps and that filter of faster, simpler, more relevant, more verbose. So whatever you're building, whatever innovation, I think that's an amazing substrate and a lens through which to look at things. Does it make things faster, also simpler, also more relevant, and also more verbose? Take a look at Google search. Extremely simple, right? Extremely fast, extremely relevant. And when you search for something, what comes back? Everything. Verbosity. And they do that with extreme agility in the background. That's the core business. That's the framework for innovation inside of Google. And now, if you take a look at this, what I'm positing here with Uber, and I looked at FSD, I'm going to take you through kind of what I've built in South Africa and show you a demonstration of this in a retailer in South Africa. So to take you there, I've got to like brag about some of the stuff that I've done. Okay. So Google, again, I built this company called Thumbs Up. We built this little thing called a payment pebble. We went off and built this thing called a blade. You may have seen it in Mr. Price or Macro or Yappy Chef. If you walk into a Yappy Chef, you'll see they've got these things in there. I was the founder of WeWork in South Africa, Soren AIs, which I'm going to talk about now in a second. I was on the board of CSIR. I'm on the board of Discovery Bank, and I'm the chairman of Altvest Capital, which is a venture fund. And yay, thank you. The 4 people in the audience. And then I lectured at these business schools, and these are kind of the companies that I've invested in, like Valor, the Bitcoin exchange. Fazam and the 2 boys that started it, they came to me and they sat down, and I got involved in the very, very beginning with them to convince them to come out. So I get involved at that stage, but then I exit very soon thereafter. And that's the world. This was the payment pebble on CNN. This is not a video. Don't dim the lights. I just put that in there. So if you want to go read up on it, yes, people using it. That's the founder of Yappy Chef and myself. They opened up a physical store, and the notion was the notion of let's make the technology disappear. Because why must we have point of sale machines inside of a retail environment? Why? Let's take the point of sale machines out. They don't have point of sale. And they were very intrigued by that. And then we showed them the payment blade. And what they said is, okay, we're going to augment our humans in the store with this cognition, this artificial cognition, and give a service that was previously unimagined. They did it. This was their first concept store on the left-hand side in Cape Town. And this is the one in Sandton. I took this picture in Sandton last year. I asked these guys, hey guys, can I take a picture? And they were like, who are you? And I said, no, I built that device. And they were like, yeah, right. Yeah. Just take the picture. I remember that. My kids were with me. They were like, see, Dad. They don't even believe it. But anyway, so it's still being used by them. And I'm not involved in this business at all. I think I've owned 9% of it, but I'm not active in the business whatsoever. But it's extraordinary technology. It was way ahead of its time, because behind this, we built a private application store. We forked Android and we ran Android on there. We reverse engineered a scanner. That little payment pebble, if you ever want to sit down with me and ping me, I can kind of do a lecture on how we built that thing. And that thing, to me, is the most complex thing I've ever built, and probably one of the most complex things to build, even today. It's extraordinary. I mean, the chipsets in there, the security wrapping, the certifications that we had to go through, etc. But we did it. And we were the first of our kind in the world to do this type of technology. This was before Square, by the way. You know Square with a little white dongle? Jack Dorsey? We built this before Square. And we got Visa to invest in this business. We took it global. We took it to ANZ. We took it to Southeast Asia. And it went global, and we manufactured in Randburg, and it still does that today. So it's pretty cool. You see this in Mr. Price. They use it as a scanning device, not just a payment device. So that's the payment blade. You'll see they do self-checkout with the little pebble. That's a really warped thing. And I kind of pinged the guys, and I said, what's going on here? And apparently that was just an R&D thing. But I don't know why they're doing it with the technology. I'm not involved in it anymore. But I want to tell you about this. So when I exited this business, I quit. And I think you guys can appreciate this as software developers. I mean, I gave about just over 7 years also to Thumbs Up. And I must be honest, I burnt it at both ends. It cost me my first marriage. It broke me. People say, why do you present in a hat? And people ask me to wear the hat. It was because when I used to do presentations, when I worked at Thumbs Up, I had started losing hair because of the stress levels. So I used to go and do presentations with my hat on. And then people have kind of known me to have a hat. So now I get asked to put the hat, and I don't have patches on my head anymore. But they still want me to wear the hat, so I do it. But that's the origin behind that. It was so stressful. But we did it. We built it and I jumped out and I quit. And I was like, so what could we do? So we sat down on not a napkin, but we had like a piece of paper and we wrote it down. We said, why don't we inject AI, machine learning, not LLMs, but let's do machine learning on retail shelves. Why can't we make the shelf feel? And we wanted to do that. And so what we did is we built a little sliver, a little plate. We had little different iterations of it. Does it come back? Okay, you guys working. So we built little iterations of it, but it was a little plate that you would put on the shelf and then put the products that were on that shelf on the top. And suddenly the shelf had the ability to feel. It could sense weight. So we put a weight sensor in there. Now, the architecture of it was weight sensors and then obviously some circuitry, etc. And then power was a big issue. So we had to get our own power and we figured that out with the store. And now suddenly the plate had the ability to federate in real time movement of products on the plate. That was extraordinary for them. Right? So now suddenly SAP was being orchestrated with not 2 to 3 week old information, but real-time information. And that fascinated them. Right? The SAP guys were like, no, and we had like huge issues with it. We're going to come back. We had like huge issues with it, etc., because they didn't believe us. And what we did was that. And now, because it could feel weight, we could put triggers in it. So we could say if you fully stocked X, if you mediocrely stock Y, if you out of stock, you like X, Y, and less this. Then triggers would go. So we'd send it to Unilever, we'd send it to whoever the brand manager was of that particular product, we'd send it off, and they'd know. Then one of the engineers said, are we back? So one of the engineers said, okay, let me get back. I was showing the architecture, but just what I noticed in amongst the aisles was untapped potential. Because when you and I walk around and we touch a product, or we look at a product and we engage with the product, no one inside the retailer is doing anything with that today. That's insane. To me, that's like enormously valuable real-time information that lays unlocked. So we did this. So yes, this is what it looks like. So on the top, there's 2 pictures overlaid. I apologize for that. But on the blue arrow, you see the plate. That plate is the one I'm talking about. It can feel. On the left, you see the plate again underneath biogen products. The red arrow is showing you an eye. Because when we started feeling, we picked up that we got more requests from the brand managers. They were saying, okay, we know what's on but is it merchandised properly? Can you do that? And then one of my engineers said, well, let's put the eye on the back looking onto the products. And then we said, no, let's put the eye in the front of the shelf. So we 3D printed a little housing, and inside there's a 172-degree viewing lens, and we put it in that housing, and we connected it to the plate, and suddenly the shelf could feel temperature, weight, movement, etc., but it now could also see. And when it could see, everything changed. Now, this that I'm showing you right now is about 5, 6 years old. We did this ago. And when it could see out, that was extraordinary. And then we started writing machine learning engines based upon the environment around us, so we could see how many people were walking by. So we had a footfall counter. Then we could see when people were walking by and looking, we had a viewing counter, right? And then when you came in front of the shelf, when you stood in front of the shelf, we had a dwelling counter. If you picked up the product, put it in your hand and went back, we call that an engagement counter. We picked it up and put it into and walked away, we call that a conversion counter. We could do that in real time. That changed everything for them. Right, because now they could see like all this engagement, they could see foot traffic, but you know what we did? We started training it on what it was seeing outside. So we could see ethnicity of the people, we could see gender, we could see average age, we could see sentiment, we could see what you're wearing, the brands, we could see if you were carrying anything, what was in your bags. We could correlate, we could see you in the store coming back again, same point again. So we'd have this like another crisscross counter, which was like a memory-based count. We could remember you for a while and we'd delete the record again, right? Then we took like the Facebook API and we cross-referenced your face with your Facebook profile. No, we didn't do that. We won't do that because software developers are good people. We don't do that. We don't do that. Right? People say, Poppy. Poppy's got nothing to do. The fact that you male, that you look sad all the time, you Caucasian, and your average age is 40, it's got nothing to do with Poppy. And I can use that information. And you know what was extraordinary about this? When we deployed this, you see Biogen, Bioimmune, we did a study across a month, and their assumption was that the people that buy this product are Caucasian females, average age 40. You see, because of that, take a look at the products underneath on the shelf. You see Dove, and it's like all female-based products, according to them, because Caucasian females buy this product. We ran it, and we discovered that the majority of people that buy Bioimmune, average age 45, black males. Their jaws dropped. They were like, no way. So they had the entire demographical data incorrect. The way the product was living, completely not correct. So then we fixed all of that up. Now, what was extraordinary to them was because we could see out, we decided we were going to implement some triggers relative to what we could see. So you see that little screen? That little screen would prompt content relative to what it could see. So if it was a female, female content. If it was male, male content. Child, child content. So this is what we did. So if you go into a discount today in Mall of Africa, some of the clicks I have them into, they're on gondola ends. These are, some of the gondola ends are intelligent. Some of them don't have the intelligence in them. But the point is, here's a little screen and a big screen. Notice no more Radox and lady products underneath. Now you got ISOWay meathead products underneath the bar. It's because like males buy the product, right? So just to show you that it changed the way the plan worked for where the products were positioned relative to what we were giving them. But the power here was the fact that we were federating into SAP for the first time ever, real-time data sets, and SAP was starting engines of trucks predictively based upon our triggers in the store, you and I walking around, not a point of sale system set of data that's 2 to 3 weeks old or some other set of data, right? That Pitt was giving them in an Excel spreadsheet that he sent up to head office. Now, the point is, this is how every business looks. Whenever you take AI and you employ it into any environment, always look for the latent real-time information that lays dormant that can be unleashed. That's what I keep seeing everywhere. So as you're building your code and you're building your application sets, etc., look for real-time information all the time. Look for sensors. And you know what will happen when you build it in this way? Your user interfaces start dissipating and they go towards the back because your user interface is no longer an application UI. It's a sensory framework for event iteration, right? Is the temperature this? Is the movement this? Is the weight this? Those are triggers. The user interface moving forward is sensory execution, relevance. It's the blind guy getting into the car and taking him to Taco Bell. It's not the person with the beautiful Garmin device. No. The true execution is its dissipation. When you push it away. We went to Discam, we didn't show them technology. We didn't show them a dashboard. We just told them we're going to send you an email whenever triggers go off, we're just going to send you a message. Then they asked, well, can't you write this like an app? And we said, okay. And then in that app would trigger, like triggers would pop up in the app. And then in the app, they could see across 400 stores how this particular brand was performing based upon its position in the store. And they could make a decision in real time. Now they can do things like correlate external traffic, load shedding, air pollution. We engage with the CSIR. And we're starting to pick up, does air pollution kind of influence people's retail manners? We don't know that. We're now picking up, we can correlate that to traffic patterns, to load shedding, to temperature outside, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And suddenly you create a service that was previously unimagined in retail. A hyper-personalized service. Now, so another word that I want you to take away from here is something that we've used a lot, but we don't truly understand it because we've never had it, and that is hyper-personalization. None of you in this room, neither me, has ever had computing that was hyper-personalized. ChatGPT is not personalized yet. Yes, in terms of GitHub co-piloting, it kind of learns how you code, et cetera, but true hyper-personalization is coming. This is what I'm waiting for. If you know what I'm excited about, is hyper-personalization, where I have my co-pilot or my digital twin or my second brain, whatever you want to call this thing. But this thing will be so married to me, it will know everything on all my devices, all my pictures, everything, where I go, my trips, my meal preferences, everything. I want something that when I go to a restaurant and I sit down, it's read my entire Garmin data sets, it knows my steps, it knows my medication, it knows everything. And as I sit down, it goes, Stafford, watch out. And I go, what? And I look at my phone, it says, don't order menu item 3 and 4 because the probability of you feeling lethargic 2 hours later is 80%. Right? That's what we want. We don't want some Strava app and then some Garmin app. Ugh. I want an LLM like ChatGPT to predictively speak to me in natural language and tell me based upon the data sets that I give it to act in a particular way. When you change human behavior through laws, people break laws. But when you show people the execution of the behavior in real time, it changes their behavior. When you say speed limit is 60 k's an hour, people go 80, 90, etc. When you put the little box there that shows them their speed, what happens? You slow down. right? People's behavior changes when you show them in real time the consequences of their actions. It's extraordinary. There's another project in New York. I don't have time for it now that I want to articulate, but it was a sewer project when they had a problem in downtown Manhattan. I had an apartment in Brooklyn, in Dumbo, and I had a bunch of friends, and they were all hackers and stuff. And it's my time at Google. No, it was my time at Google, and we went Google again. There was a problem. I think there was a time between like 3 and 6, and this part of Manhattan where the river would smell like really, really bad. The Hudson would like really smell, and like the government didn't know what to do, the municipality, the local government, etc. So one of the guys, hackers, he lifted up the manhole cover, he went in there, and he monitored, and he noticed that at certain times of the day, when the sewage level goes past that level, it doesn't get processed anymore, and people keep doing what they're doing, and then it flushes raw into the Hudson. So you know what he did? Put a sensor on there, he linked it to a mobile app, and people got it, etc. So it would tell you before you take a shower, like, don't take a shower right now, do it in 15 minutes time, because you do it right now, we're close to flood level. And that fixed the problem. They don't have to go build more capacity. They don't have to build more like sewage treatment systems, etc. You just had to change human behavior relative to consequence in real time, and it impacted the environment. That was extraordinary. I remember that. That was like a little hack that happened. He got fined, but then the project became acknowledged by Bloomberg, was the mayor at that time. It was quite big. So let me show you how this happens when you walk into a discount store. Take a look at this. As you walk in, I'm going to come back to hyper-personalization. As you walk in, notice that's me, and it triggers, because it sees I'm a male, it triggers male content, right? If it was a girl, no, I'm not going to make that joke here. It's the wrong audience. But the point is, the big screen does this. Let me show you the next video. Don't play sound here, guys. It's not necessary on the video itself, but I just want to show, this is one of my engineers, Sean. He's just showing how it feels, right? So when you pick up the product, what happens? The little screen will trigger. And it'll say, hey, don't you want to put your email address in here? And when you do, we'll send you the recipe book relative to that particular product in real time. You could pay, you could tap to pay, you could enter rewards, but the event is triggered based upon a sensory action at the very edge. Okay, simple. That wasn't, LLMs. That wasn't like OpenAI. That was 5-6 years ago, done at Discam, and we filed quite a few patents associated with that, and I think we were ahead. One of the things that we picked up here, just FYI, and it's still a problem today, a massive problem today, is bias with AI. Because when we took a look at some of the bigger cloud-based AI tools, so we were taking images and employing some of their machine learning on our images to disseminate like age, sentiment, etc., black faces, error rate was very, very high. I mean, the accuracy was around 18%, 19%. People of color would always get gender wrong, or would get average age wrong, or would get sentiment wrong. You know why? Because those machines in the Northern Hemisphere just were never trained on that amount of people of color. And so it did constantly get it wrong. That's still a challenge right now. I have a little skunkworks project right now that's connected to some of these retail implementations. I can't really tell, but what we're doing is we are training an LLM on black faces, people of color. So we can drive that accuracy rate very close to where Caucasian people are, which is at the higher 80s to lower 90s. At the moment, we're in the 60s, and we're the best in the world right now. So we think we can drive it very close to that by just constantly training. And this is reinforced learning, just saying, no, it's that, it's this, it's that. But what we're picking up is that we found with some of like the code itself, that the way the code was written from an optical perspective, this is completely off track here, but the way the code is written from an optical perspective, it looks at shadowing in the face incorrectly. So there's no way when people have X amount of pigmentation in their skin, the shadowing is correct. So what we've actually discovered, it wasn't the fact that it was trained incorrectly, it was the fact that the very, very, very edge, the actual hardware firmware there, the way it was orchestrated or architected, or the way it's written to disseminate who you are, it's looking at shadowing. And on a Caucasian face, shadowing works very different from a person that's of color. And we kind of fix some things that we're still fixing and to fix that. But that's a big issue. So in businesses today, the biggest challenge that I have, I sit on the board of Discovery Bank, I sit on the board of all these big businesses. The biggest issue that we have right now is not should we or can we, it's should we. And we're building constitutions around AI because you have to have a proper moral and ethics constitution. And the people in the room shouldn't be you and I. We fascinate people when we get into a room because we show them all these things and it blows them away. What we need to be careful of is that we balance our work with the humanities. Bring the people that understand Greek mythology into the room, journalism and ancient Roman history, etc. Because those people understand the consequence of action. You don't. You're fascinated by the tools. And your unintended consequence is a significant dilemma for society. What we build, there are no legislative frameworks that stop me. When I built this 5, 6, 7 years ago, GDPR was still nothing. I don't even think there was GDPR. POPI wasn't even implemented in South Africa. There was nothing to stop us from cross-referencing faces, to remember who you were, to look at your identity online, go find you and do stuff like that. There was no legislative framework to stop us at all. And I'd argue even now there isn't. And that's a big, big danger. So I think as BBD, I think one of the things that you guys have to think very carefully around is what you're building. It's not can we. The question is should we? Because businesses will allow you to do that. And you could be participants in a dystopia that's very, very real. Now, for people of color, we get this very, very quickly, right? Broadly speaking, we don't really get this very, very quickly. It's people of color and women are generally the folks that get affected by this stuff first. And AIs, right now, that's the biggest dilemma that I find in AIs. You know, it's extraordinary the biases that are built and constructed inside of them. Let's keep going. How much time do I have? I've got 5 minutes. This went from 3 to like 5. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to end on this, and let me. I was going to go here, but let me end on this. This is my mother called me last night to tell me a comment she posted on Facebook. Got 26 likes. She says she broke the internet. She's happier than when I got my matric exemption. This is funny, right? But the point is that what's happening on the outside of our networks right now is people are expressing their humanities in ways that even they don't understand. It's extraordinary. The most valuable businesses in the world today, if you look at the slides coming afterwards, is businesses that are co-creative. They are coagulation of us and them. They are not businesses that build great things. I mean, think about it. The most valuable businesses in the world today, the top 10, equal 10 trillion. 10 trillion. If you take a look at 5 companies, Facebook, Meta, Alphabet, Apple, I forget the fifth one, but their combined market cap outstrips the rest of the S&P 500. That's how unbalanced it is. It's extraordinary. We've never seen this amount of attention, wealth inside of businesses ever before. But if you take a look at who they are, they're us. If you took all our stuff out of Facebook, Facebook would be nothing but like a really cuck app. If you took all our tweets out of Twitter, what would Twitter be? If you took all our stuff out of YouTube, what would YouTube be? If you took all our tweets out of, keep going. If you take all our stuff, these are businesses that are co-creative businesses. These are businesses that are not businesses that deliver incredible products and services. These are businesses that create architectures of participation for us to express our humanity inside of it. And that's accelerating. In 2007, 3 things happened. The iPhone was announced. Millennials made up more of the workforce than any other generation. And more people lived in cities than outside of cities in 2007. Those are the 3 things that made all the technological advancements happen between 2007 and 2020. Social media, cloud computing came from the Apple device with the App Store, the ecosystem, with the millennials, the generational shift, with the human proximity change. We saw that again in 2020, 2021. That was when the pandemic hit. What happened? From a technology perspective, what did we see? AI starting to emerge, but the big one was Bitcoin, right? This cryptographic blockchain network. Yes, it's been around for a while before then, but I'm talking about mass adoption. Your granny now knows about Bitcoin. Like your uncle knows about it. Everyone knows about Bitcoin now. So we've seen this massive technological architectural change on blockchains and technology and LLMs, etc. And I've shared that with you today. The second thing is we saw hyper-digitization, intergenerational hyper-digitization. We saw old people putting their credit cards into websites that have never done it before, but they had to because they were in lockdown. So we saw this hyper. And the third thing that happened was not urbanization. We saw suburbanization, people working from home. All the infrastructure that was put in place for working from home by enterprises is extraordinary. They had to put in beautiful laptops with broadband connections. ISPs had to upgrade. They had to increase the security in their data centers, etc. And this tapestry are all the elements that I believe will direct what the next decade will look like. So if you combine LLMs and this weird thing that we're seeing happening in this world, you combine it with this hyper-digitization, Generation Z coming, Gen Zs, there's a lot of Gen Zs in this room, right? You guys are starting to emerge. You're a very strange generation. I have a 23-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old daughter. I asked her the other day, I said, Bethany, don't you want a car? She says, no, I don't want a car. She says, what do you want? She says, I want the Uber app with your credit card, Dad. That's all she wants. You guys as Gen Zs, you don't want to own anything. You just want to access stuff. You don't want a car, you want Uber. You don't want a house, you want Airbnb. Like, why do I want a house? I want a house. Right? You don't want to own things. It's extraordinary. We've never seen this before. We've also never seen a generation that has ever been more privacy violated than you. Your birth is inside of a social media container. The first time you walked is inside of a social media container. The first time you went to school, your graduation, all the trips that you took are in a container that you don't own. And that data set is being trained now. And you have no right to that data. Yes, GDPR, yeah. They say, okay, you have the right to be forgotten. Yeah, they'll delete it on the UI level, but underneath, all that data still sits, and they'll play around with it. So this is an interesting time that we're sitting in, but it's never been for you as a business, for you as individuals, in terms of what you do. You have superpowers. You truly have superpowers. But you need to realize that your superpower, its kryptonite, is inequality. We can have a dystopia emerge from the work that we do. But that dystopia won't be because of the machines. It will be because of a lack of reimagination on our behalf in this room to build stuff, not to mitigate or disintermediate humanity, but to build things to express humanity in ways that it can't understand. Human-machine symbiosis is a beautiful thing. That's why the internet is what it is. And in closing, I want to say this. The reason social media is so big and so popular isn't because of Facebook and Instagram. It's because we are no different from the human being that walked into a cave, put clay in our mouth, put our hands on the wall and spat. Why did that happen? Technology is now reflecting our humanity in ways that we never understood before. It's taking us back to why we did that and why we behaved like that. That was a physical wall. We spat on it, etc. Now we have a Facebook wall. We have a Twitter wall. We have streams of walls of information, and we're constantly federating ourselves, our express. Why do we do this? Because I'll tell you what, every single one of you in this room, the tools that you build allow people to do the following. Number one, be recognized. Every one of you in this room and every person that uses your software and services, they innately need three things. Number one, to be recognized. That's why open source software was so big. Open source software wasn't big because of the commercial model, it's because people want to be recognized. Right? They want their code, they're in the comment field in the code, they want the second, right, recognition, attribution. Second thing is, people want to feel a part of something, community. That's why people, how does it feel when you put your pictures of your baby into Facebook and someone clicks the like button? You feel good. Someone takes your tweet and retweets it, right? Because you're being recognized and you're feeling a part of something. And the third thing is, what every human being wants and needs is legacy. It's never to be forgotten. And that's the reason people are doing what they're doing with the tool sets that we're giving them. They're expressing their humanity. And that's a responsibility that we have in our hands to realize that these architectures that we're building, these tool sets, we shouldn't understand the technology better. We should understand our humanity more. And the substrate of humanity is recognition, it's community, it's legacy. And those are the things that stand upon love. And that's what it's all about today. Thanks so much for your time.